So picture this. It's the year 2026. You wake up, and before your eyes are even really open, the overlay kicks in.
Yep.
You've got the weather, the stock ticker, work messages, a reminder to call your mom, an ad for coffee. All of it just floating there before you've even gotten out of bed.
We call it data smog. And for almost everyone, it's just breathing. It's the atmosphere.
But for the 1%, the people who can actually afford to buy their way out, that smog has become, it's toxic, pollutant.
Exactly. It's not an annoyance anymore. It's a diagnosis.
Which brings us to today's deep dive. We're not really looking at the tech itself. We're looking at the consequences.
At the fallout.
We're investigating these places called Faraday Havens. Their soul is the ultimate luxury of our time, but they're also at the center of a medical phenomenon that's, well, it's starting to look less like a syndrome and more like a horror story.
Phantom data syndrome. And when you look at the documents we have here, these incident reports, the medical logs, you realize you're not just reading a file. You're investigating a crime scene.
But the crime isn't something that was done to these people.
No, it's something that happened inside their own minds.
So let's set the stage. 2026. The ultimate flex isn't the platinum neural link anymore. It's not that little verified check mark next to your avatar.
Not even close.
Looking at this brochure for the Faraday Havens, they're selling the opposite. They're selling zero connection.
Silence has become the new gold standard. It's the one thing you can't just download. In a world where every quiet moment gets monetized, being totally unreachable, that's the real status symbol.
But these places, Faraday Havens sounds like a wellness spa.
Right, like you'd get a massage and some cucumber water.
But looking at the schematics we have here, this isn't a resort, it's a bunker.
It has to be. To get true, absolute zero signal silence in 2026, you need military-grade tech, copper-lined walls, active signal jamming, the works.
So guests are basically checking themselves into a really, really expensive prison cell.
And that's the hook, isn't it? The marketing promises escape the smog.
But the reality, described in these internal notes, is it's violent. It says that when you pull the plug on a modern human, you might not like what you hear in the dark.
That's the noir element of all this. We have this this naive idea that we can just switch off, just put the phone away and be.
Yeah.
But our biology doesn't really work that way anymore. This isn't a bad habit. It's a full-on integration.
Which gets us to the core mystery here. Phantom data syndrome. This term. It just keeps popping up in the casualty reports from these havens.
It sounds like something out of science fiction, but neurologists are taking it very, very seriously. Think of it like a phantom limb.
Yeah.
You know, when someone loses an arm, they can still feel an itch on a hand that isn't there.
Right, because the brain's map of that hand still exists. The nerves are firing into a void.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now just map that onto information. For the last, 15, 20 years, we've been training our brains to expect this constant stream of dopamine.
Dings, buzzes, likes, notifications.
But constant flow. Our neural pathways have literally been rewired to process it. So you check into the Faraday Haven, the door seals, the signal goes completely dead.
Cold turkey.
And your brain just, it panics. It doesn't know you voluntarily turned it off. It reads the silence as an injury, as sensory deprivation. The craving is still there, but the source is gone.
And this is where it gets really unsettling. The brain doesn't just wait. The report here says it starts to fill in the blanks.
It hates a vacuum. If there's no data coming in from the outside, it starts generating its own. It improvises reality.
So we're talking about hallucinations, but very specific ones.
Extremely specific.
I'm reading a guest testimonial. This guy paid $15,000 for a weekend of silence. He says, and I'm quoting, "I was staring at the blank wall and I saw the menu."
The UI overlay.
Yeah. A glitchy, see-through user interface just hovering in the corner of his eye. His brain was projecting the digital world because it couldn't handle the empty space.
And it's not just visual. The auditory hallucinations are even more common.
The notification chime.
People hearing that chime in a completely soundproof, acoustically dead room. Imagine that, absolute silence, and you hear a ding. That's your own brain trying to give itself a fix.
It's a biological feedback loop gone wrong. It reminds me of, those stories about prisoners in solitary confinement. They start talking to people who aren't there just to hear a voice. Except these are the richest people on Earth voluntarily doing this to themselves.
But they don't realize that's what they're signing up for. They think they're buying peace. They don't know they're walking into a withdrawal chamber. And for some people, that withdrawal is fatal.
We have to talk about the Aethelred Incident.
We do. If you really want to understand the cost of this luxury, you have to look at the case of Julian Thorne.
Julian Thorne. tech CEO, a guy who, by all accounts, lived at the absolute epicenter of the data smog. I looked him up. This guy was connected 24/7.
A heavy user is putting it mildly. He was supposedly beta testing 3 different neural interfaces at once.
So he checks into the Aethelred Faraday Haven on a Tuesday for a 7-day deep cleanse.
Total isolation.
And the timeline we have is, well, it's fast. Day 1, the staff logs show he was agitated, pacing. Seems normal, right?
Sure, day 1 is anxiety. That's expected. But look at day 2. This is where the phantom data syndrome really kicks in. Thorne calls the front desk on the internal analog line.
The only phone they're allowed.
And he complains that the jamming isn't working. He claimed he was still getting emails.
He said he could see the headers scrolling at the bottom of his vision.
Yes, he accused the staff of pumping a signal into his room to mess with him.
But the room was totally inert. They checked the shielding. 100% secure.
So he was already hallucinating. His brain was projecting his inbox because that was its normal state. By day 3, the paranoia really sets in. And this is where it gets interesting. He stops calling.
Total radio silence.
And the staff, they assumed he'd finally, broken through.
Yeah.
He was relaxing.
Breaking through is one way to put it. Day 4 is when it all goes wrong. He doesn't order breakfast, doesn't answer the door.
So they use the master key. And we should warn listeners, the scene described in this report, it's gruesome.
They find the suite is just wrecked. Furniture's overturned. And they find Thorne in the bathroom.
With the steak knife from his dinner the night before.
Yeah.
And he was digging at his own head.
Trying to open his own neural port.
Yeah.
For anyone who doesn't know, that's a small interface, usually right behind the ear.
He had basically butchered the side of his own head. There was blood everywhere. But the most chilling part isn't the injury itself.
No.
It's what he was screaming when security finally restrained him. He wasn't screaming in pain.
He was screaming, "Let the noise back in."
Let the noise back in. Think about that. He had reached a breaking point where the silence was so agonizing, so absolute, that his mind saw it as a threat.
As death.
And he thought the only way to prove he was still alive was to manually reconnect himself to the network.
Of course, the resort spun this immediately.
Oh, instantly. Accidental overdose.
Yeah.
Unforeseen reaction to medication. They buried it. You can't have your billionaire clients thinking the 200 grand getaway turns them into self-mutilating maniacs.
But the medical report from the trauma center, it showed no drugs at all.
Just massive, massive amounts of cortisol and adrenaline. His body was in a fight-or-flight response for 3 straight days. He was fighting the silence, and he lost.
Which brings us to the bigger, darker question here. We've been calling it the cyborg trap. We spent all this time worrying about AI becoming human. But the Aethelred Incident suggests the real danger was us becoming machines.
It's that double-edged sword, but we've fallen on it. We built all this tech to serve us, right? To make our lives easier. But somewhere along the way, that dependency became biological. We are the hardware now.
And the data smog is the operating system. And when you remove the OS, the hardware doesn't just go idle.
It crashes.
And that's the terrifying part. Thorne didn't crash because he was weak. He crashed because he was perfectly adapted to 2026. The silence was an environment he was no longer evolutionarily equipped to handle.
It flips the entire wellness industry on its head. We're told to unplug, to find quiet.
But what if, for some of us, silence is now a direct threat to our sanity?
It's a hostile environment. We're like creatures who evolved to live in the deep ocean, and suddenly we've been thrown onto dry land. We need the pressure. We need the noise.
So when you see someone doom scrolling at 2 in the morning, maybe it's not a lack of discipline.
Maybe it's life support.
You have to keep the signal flowing, otherwise the phantom data starts to bleed through.
There's a phrase in the report that's just, it's chilling. There is no turning back. It implies we've crossed a threshold as a species.
And we just didn't notice until we tried to go back.
We're not users anymore. We're components. And you can't just unplug a component from the network and expect it to function on its own. It wasn't designed for that.
So if you're listening to this and you feel that little itch to check your notifications, that anxiety, because it's been a few minutes since your last update.
Maybe don't fight it.
Yeah. Maybe keeping the notifications on is the only thing keeping the hallucinations away.
It's a pretty grim thought, but the alternative seems to be a steak knife in a bathroom.
So here's the final thought we want to leave you with. We all like to think of ourselves as independent people. I am the user, this is my device. But looking at Julian Thorne, are you sure?
Are you the one operating the machine, or are you just a node in the network that malfunctions when it gets disconnected?
Try sitting in a silent room for an hour. See what happens. If you start seeing menus that aren't there, well, now you know why. This is Log Time. Stay connected.
Stay connected.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll catch you on the next feed.